All right, welcome everybody to another deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty huge, I think, something we all struggle with, figuring out our why. Like what's the point of it all? What really drives us? And to help us dig into this, we're going to take a look at the life of this guy, Gary Miller.
Okay, sounds interesting.
Yeah, he's a successful regional sales leader for Youth Health Advisors, and get this, a lifelong drummer.
A drummer, huh?
Yep. And all this is from this article called Storytelling for Business, The Beat of Gratitude by Mark Burdinsky. So the plan is to really dissect Gary's journey, figure out what makes him tick, and hopefully, pull out some nuggets of wisdom that we can all apply to our own lives, whatever we're doing.
I like it. So we're basically using Gary's story as like a case study for understanding why.
Exactly. And, the article jumps right into this why thing right from the start.
Yeah, how so?
Well, they kick it off with this quote from Oscar Wilde. "To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist, that is all." And it really sets Gary up as someone who, has consciously chosen to really live a full life. And he's been doing that for over 60 years.
60 years.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a run. What do you think has allowed him to really live, not just exist, for so long?
Well, the article takes us right back to his childhood to give us some clues. It seems like he was practically raised on music.
Right.
His dad played piano in this weekend jazz trio, his brother was on guitar, and they would just jam every night.
Like every single night.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what that kind of environment does to a young mind, just constant exposure to rhythm, harmony, creative expression.
I guess it's not surprising he ended up a drummer. It sounds like music was just baked into his DNA.
It really does. And I thought it was interesting that his brother was actually 10 years younger than him. You might think that kind of age gap would mean they'd be into different stuff, but the article actually says they're still super close, and that a lot of that is thanks to their shared love of music. It's like those early passions become these really strong bonds.
Yeah, it's more than just learning an instrument, isn't it? It's about connection, communication, maybe even finding your place within a family.
Totally. And this drumming thing, it hasn't just been a phase for him. He still plays every Sunday morning
Really? Where?
at his church in Juniper, Florida. And for 2 services.
2 services every
Yeah.
Sunday. He must be pretty dedicated. What kind of music does he play at church?
Well, it's actually kind of a cool blend of spiritual Christian music and contemporary rock. And here's the kicker. They even throw in some secular stuff like James Taylor and Steely Dan to make it more appealing to younger folks.
Oh, Steely Dan in church.
Yeah.
That's pretty unexpected.
I know, right? The article even says people would come up to him after the service and be like, "Is that Steely Dan you were playing?"
That's hilarious. So it sounds like he's not afraid to think outside the box, meet people where they're at. And isn't that kind of a theme in his professional life, too?
You nailed it. Gary's a successful regional sales leader for Youth Health Advisors, which means he helps self-employed people figure out all the ins and outs of health coverage. And the article makes this really cool connection between his personal philosophy and his success in his career. His motto is basically, dare to be different and always look to give.
Dare to be different and always look to give. That's a pretty good motto. So how does that translate to selling insurance?
Well, think about it. The insurance world can be pretty traditional, right? So maybe his willingness to approach it from a different angle, a more, I don't know, maybe a more relational angle, thanks to his musical background and his collaborative nature, maybe that's what makes him stand out.
Makes sense. And the always look to give part probably means he's not just trying to close deals. He genuinely wants to help people.
You got it. But to understand how he got to this point, we need to rewind a bit, back to 1992. He and his wife, Cindy, were living in New York, had this electronic computer distributor business.
Sounds like they're doing pretty well for themselves.
Yeah, but then things took a nosedive. The business went south, as the article puts it.
Oh, it's rough.
And on top of that, New York's high cost of living, crazy weather, it was time for a change.
So what do they do?
Well, that's when things get interesting. Cindy spots this newspaper ad promising a $100,000 annual income. They were in a pretty tight spot financially, a hair away from bankruptcy, the article says.
That's a lot of pressure.
Big time. But Gary, he saw it as an opportunity. So he takes the leap and dives headfirst into the insurance industry. Pretty bold move, right?
It is, especially when you're already dealing with so much. So how did it go?
Well, this is where another key player enters the picture. Howard Siegel, another New Yorker. They hit it off, become partners at this insurance company, which was called UGA at the time. And the article points out that they both had struggled financially in the past. which I think played a big role in their success together.
It's like they understood each other's struggles,
Yeah,
right? They could relate to each other in a way that maybe others couldn't.
definitely. And for Gary, this partnership was a game changer. He paid off his debt, bought a new house. It totally transformed their financial situation.
So he went from almost bankrupt to successful business owner. It's pretty inspiring.
It is. And now he's passing on what he's learned to his own team at Use Health Advisors. He's all about these two principles: persistency and gratitude.
Persistency and gratitude, huh? Pretty basic, but powerful.
Exactly. He really believes that facing challenges is just part of the game, a chance to learn and grow. And he stresses the importance of building a strong team around you because, let's face it, success is rarely a solo act.
It makes you realize that you don't have to do everything alone, right? Having a solid support system can make all the difference.
Absolutely. And Gary's been self-employed for a big chunk of his career, so he really gets the entrepreneurial grind. He even uses this phrase, wearing all the hats, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to.
Yeah, juggling all those responsibilities. But he doesn't just talk about the challenges, right? He's also big on this daily gratitude thing.
He's a firm believer in it. He actually thinks it's the key to financial independence, the opposite of feeling stuck on that hamster wheel, as he calls it.
I see what he means. Focusing on what you're grateful for instead of what you lack probably helps you stay motivated and see the possibilities.
It's all about perspective, right?
Yeah.
And there's this really heartwarming story in the article that shows his commitment to giving back. He was visiting the USHA office in Fort Lauderdale, and he made a point of personally greeting every single agent.
That's pretty cool.
It was a small gesture, but it had a huge impact on this one young agent who was having a rough time. And it really made Gary realize something. Everyone you will ever let in your entire life is going through something.
It's a good reminder that we never really know what someone else is dealing with. A little kindness can go a long way.
It really can. And, Gary's about to turn 65, but he's not slowing down one bit. He even jokes about how his health insurance premiums are about to get cheaper.
That's funny. He doesn't seem to have the typical view of retirement, does he?
Not at all. He says, why would you stop if you're still enjoying what you're doing? He thinks this whole idea of 65 being the end of the road is kind of outdated, and I tend to agree.
Me too. It's about finding what fulfills you and keeping at it, no matter your age. And it sounds like a big part of what keeps Gary going is the culture at U Health Advisors. He talks about this brotherhood and camaraderie he feels there, which he says is pretty rare in the corporate world.
It seems like that sense of community and support is super important to him. He even says it's a big part of what gets him excited to go to work every day.
That's awesome. It's proof that a positive work environment can make a huge difference in your overall happiness and career longevity. And on top of that, Gary's a huge advocate for lifelong learning. He's always reading or listening to audiobooks.
Yeah, he's all about expanding your knowledge, gaining new perspectives. He even recommends specific books to his team, like Conversion Code and Fanatical Prospecting.
And it's not just about reading for fun, right? He wants them to apply what they learn to their work.
Absolutely. It's about taking action, putting that knowledge to good use.
I like that. The article does this cool thing, too, connecting his love of music with his overall philosophy. He sees music as the score underlying life.
Yeah, like a movie soundtrack that sets the mood and tone.
And I guess what he's saying is that we have the power to create our own soundtrack, right? Through our actions and our mindset, we can influence our own experiences.
He's basically saying we're not just passive observers, we're active participants in creating the music of our lives.
I love that analogy. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Gary Miller's life,
Yeah.
what are the main takeaways for our listeners? What can we learn from his story?
Well, it all boils down to understanding your why, right? What's your driving force, your purpose? Gary shows us that it's about being persistent, even when things get tough, and cultivating an attitude of gratitude. It's about valuing those human connections and realizing that even small acts of kindness can have a ripple effect.
And let's not forget the importance of lifelong learning, always seeking to grow and improve.
So true. And most importantly, aligning your actions with your core values, what truly matters to you.
Great advice. I hope our listeners take some time to reflect on all of this and think about how they can apply these principles to their own lives.
Me too. And to leave everyone with one final thought, I'm going to borrow Gary's metaphor. Thinking about his journey, what beat are you creating in your own life and work? And how can you make sure that rhythm is in sync with your deepest sense of purpose?
That's a great question to ponder. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive.
Thanks for joining me. And to all our listeners out there, keep on drumming to the beat of your own why.
Yeah, find your rhythm.